So thank you, Deborah Watts, for joining us on Objections and speaking about the experiences with the Emmett Till Legacy Foundation and your experiences as Emmett Till's cousin. Just to start things off with the breaking news from this week, how do you and your family feel in the wake of the Derek Chauvin verdict?
I'll tell you, thank you for asking. And first of all, thank you for having me with you today. It's an honor and a privilege to speak, not necessarily on behalf of my family, but just as one family member. And I'll tell you, from those that I've heard from, including myself, we were just happy for the George Floyd family. We were ecstatic to hear that there's a guilty on all three counts. Derek Chauvin killed George Floyd. And finally, we could breathe just for a moment. We could exhale just for a moment because we know that there's more work to be done. But we were ecstatic and just happy for the George Floyd family and for
Mm.
our nation as well and for our community.
In the wake of the verdict, a member of the Floyd family had invoked the memory of Emmett Till and said that he was the first George Floyd. Um, what was your reaction to Philomene's Floyd's words there?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, we had spent some time together a few days before that, and I believe that just sharing that bond, we were able to embrace and just understand each other's journey and pain, and in sharing the story of Emmett Till, and certainly there are those that happened, the lynchings, number of them, numerous of them, thousands of them happened before Emmett. But to connect the dots with how the country responded, um, uh, Floyd was able to do that. And he understood it. And he understood how important that moment was when they got the verdict and how different it was, with Emmett Till's verdict of not guilty for those that committed the crime and that are still, we still are holding out and expecting charges to be brought against Carolyn Bryant Dunham. So there's still work to be done. There's a similarity there. They are still holding out. There are three other officers that need to be brought before their peers, and justice needs to be served there as well. So it was heartwarming to hear him make that connection because I'll tell you, we've worked really hard for the past 16 years, trying to connect the past to the present and the future so that no more Emmett Tills would happen again.
Mm.
So I appreciated him making that connection, and it is something I think that our future, our young people need to understand. And I hope that they were able to Google Emmett, those that for the first time were hearing his name, along with them being familiar with George Floyd, to understand that there are strong parallels there. So it was heartwarming.
I want to talk about the cold case that your family has been pushing for, that the Till family has been pushing for. But I first, just a little bit farther with what you were saying. How, at, I found it very striking that when George Floyd was murdered, the funeral, uh, there was an open casket in in invoking Emmett Till. How did the families connect? How did you connect with the Floyd family?
Um, Technically, or I'm
Oh, no, no, no.
understanding
I
from a
mean,
spiritual
how did
perspective,
that
or
process happen? You mentioned folks connecting the dots between the history of Emmett Till's lynching and the present day. How did what was that process like getting to know the Floyd family?
well, I'll tell you, the media has swarmed, if you will, upon Minnesota, and being out with some of the families, groups called like the Family Supporting Families Against Police Violence, being a part of some of the press conferences. And as I lift up the work of all of the protesters and those that have been working on legislation, I happen to be in the audience, and one of the networks, CNN actually, had connected with me and wanted to make that bond and that connection happen. Because I think people, when we show up at whether it's press conferences or we have an opportunity to speak, to amplify Emmett's voice, people think, they do make that connection. And I think our country reflects on it. And as Ronia said, some people forget about Emmett Till. And so our work is that they don't forget about Emmett and they connect the past to the present and future. And, so that we don't have any more Dante Wrights or have any more Philando Castiles or have any more Eric Garners or any more George Floyd. So that's how that happened. And so we just appreciate the opportunity to amplify his voice before audiences across the country, across the world, to amplify his name and the work of Mamie Till Mobley, his mother, who started this. I mean, she opened that casket so the world could see what hate looked like and what they did to her only child, who at age 14 was lynched, was he was murdered. He was shot in the head. He was beaten. He had a 75-pound cotton gin fan tied around his neck with barbed wire, thrown into the Tallahatchie River so that he would be weighted down, not to emerge again. And his body did emerge, and his mother made it a point of sacrificing her grief, and setting aside her grief just for a moment to make sure that the world knew what America was doing, to young people and how white supremacy and how it was easy for Roy Bryant, J.W. Milam, and all the other accomplices to kidnap him and to take him out, to teach him a lesson, which turned into a murder. So we just appreciate the opportunity to remind the country of that and to connect those dots. And so people are getting it now. And it's not an old story. It's 66 years old, but it is one that we should never forget. And so I appreciate the opportunity.
And tell me a bit about the cold case. Your family has been fighting for more than 65 years to bring a measure of justice to that very brutal act that you described. Can you tell me about your efforts in that and the hope you still hold out for?
Yeah, well, just going back, Mamie Till Mobley, Emmett's mother, tried for 47 years to get Emmett's case reopened. There were promises made to her. There were, documentaries made and books sold and movies made, if you will. And her story was out there. She was standing at podiums with the NAACP and other organizations, actually fighting, for other cases and other families as well, but never receiving justice for her son. The year she died, 2003, the year after that, Emmett's case was reopened. It was reopened in 2004 with evidence that was brought forth by a filmmaker by the name of Keith Beauchamp and the work of Alvin Sykes, who we just lost recently. And the two of them, with their efforts, along with others, Simeon Wright, my other cousin, who's no longer with us as well, and other relatives, impressed upon our Department of Justice to reopen the case. And so congressional members supported that, and the Department of Justice decided to reopen Emmett's case. So that happened 2004. Then, unfortunately, in 2007, it was brought before a grand jury, and there was a decision that there was not enough evidence to bring the two remaining, I would say, accomplices to trial. One of which was Carolyn Bryant Donham, who is still alive. And so we fast forward then to That was 2007. We fast forward to 2017, and the case was reactivated because of a book that was written by Timothy Tyson called The Blood of Emmett Till. And we're still waiting, for the, I guess, for the results of that investigation. So it's been reactivated. And then, a murder case is never really closed, if you will, until there is some sort of justice. But with the I'd say the statute of limitations and other things, we do have so many barriers. But this case is still open, and I want the world to understand that Carolyn Bryant Donham is the last living accomplice that has never been charged with her role in Emmett Till's kidnapping and murder. And so we are still holding out for that. It is in the hands of Mississippi right now. So we're calling on the DA, Dwayne Richardson, to move forward with the case. Simeon Wright, who's no longer with us, was pushing for that. And there were promises made to investigate this case and to also to update the family on the progress going forward. We don't have an update, and we're still waiting for that. The next of kin deserves the answers. Thelma Wright Edwards is still alive. In fact, she's turning 90 soon. And she's been holding out. She's been interviewed by national publications. She's done Zooms, and her cries have not been answered. She's also written letters to the DA, and we're hoping to get some response soon. So we're trying everything that we can to push this case forward. So we're holding out, I would say, hope, but we're pushing forward, and we're hoping that the country helps us demand that Dwayne Richardson do his job, do the right thing. We don't have a lot of time. Carolyn Bryant Donham is of age right now, and at the very minimum, she needs to be charged with the murder of Emmett Louis Till. What happens in the courtroom, or whether it's with the grand jury or whatever, we can't dictate that. But at the very minimum, she at least needs to be charged and held accountable for her role in his murder. So that's where we are today. Still holding. We're still waiting, for answers to better even understand what's the process now. Timothy Tyson's book was written. They reactivated the case. Okay, so who else are they investigating? Is Carolyn Bryant Donham under investigation? Are there others that they found in the book that maybe explained other people that were involved? Carolyn Bryant also had memoirs that were written. What's in her memoirs? What did that tell the FBI and the other investigators? So the case is in, like I said, in Dwayne Richardson's hands. So we want the state of Mississippi to get involved. We want the Attorney General to get involved. We want also the Department of Justice to question what's happening in Mississippi. We want the President of the United States, Joe Biden, along with our Vice President, Kamala Harris, to be concerned about what's happening here. We have the 66-year-old case that's now being brought to the forefront by the Floyd family even. So we have this opportunity, this small window of opportunity to do something that I think that will help the country heal and certainly bring some closure and healing and justice to our family.
You mentioned that the case turned the corner with the publication of the book in recent years. Can you describe in detail a little bit more about what we learned that reactivated this case and brought more hope to your family?
Well, those are the questions that we have. What was the evidence? What was found in Timothy Tyson's book? What was found? He mentioned, and it became worldwide news, that Carolyn Bryant recanted her story, her lie against Emmett. But later we found that she did not. Her family maintains that Carolyn's story is still true. And so we're not sure where that recanting came from, but her family has denied it. She has memoirs that we've not seen, But I'm sure and I hope the FBI has done their investigation and have uncovered something there. And hopefully the evidence that was brought before the grand jury and Joyce Childs in 2004 to 2007, we hope that along with this new evidence or whatever they've discovered is brought to Dwayne Richardson to reopen this case, or not reopen, but to bring the appropriate charges. We have a petition out there now as well, Adam, that we've asked for the Department of Justice, the state of Mississippi, Dwayne Richardson, the President of the United States, the Attorney General, Garrett,
Merrick Garland.
Merrick Garland, to take a look at this, because this should not be swept under the rug, should not be pushed to the side. This is not an old case. It is one that is open, and it is one that needs the attention of our public, of the highest levels of our government, along with those in the local government area in Mississippi who has this case in their hands. So, if you can help us determine, because I don't believe they've disclosed anything to the media as well. And certainly, let me make sure that I explain this. I don't want to say anything to impede the progress of this case or it moving forward. So, although I don't know much more, but I certainly would not want to say anything or do anything that would impede the investigation or do anything to influence, or not to necessarily influence, but to impact in any kind of way. But I think, our cry for justice is one that's valid. Cries for or demands for reconciliation without justice are disrespectful to our family. And there are those, I believe, in Mississippi that want to sweep this under the rug. They want to move forward with tourism and with other initiatives and activities with blood on their hands. And so we are saying, let's first things first here. Let's get justice. Join up with us in Mississippi. Join up with us. Do the right thing. Dwayne Richardson, DA Richardson. I respect, his position, and I respect the power that he has. Use your power and your platform to bring this to justice, to bring Emmett Till's case to justice. And for our family, those remaining members of our family who are still dealing with the trauma, the grief, even though it's 66 years. But we don't forget, that's still in our hearts. That grief and that trauma never goes away. So this is an opportunity for not only our family to heal, but our country to heal also.
What would a trial mean to you and your family after 66 years?
It would mean that Carolyn Bryant Donham is held accountable, just as George Floyd's murderer, Derek Chauvin was held accountable for his actions and for the murder of George Floyd. Also, the other three officers. So, you have those other remaining individuals. You have Carolyn Bryant now that has never been charged for her role. Someone had to identify the night that he was kidnapped. And evidence shows, at least from what I've read and talking to others, that Carolyn Bryant Donham was that person. So, I'm not an expert, I'm not a legal scholar, I'm not an attorney. But as obvious as it was with the death of George Floyd, this is an obvious case as well. Carolyn Bryant Donham needs to be held accountable. Whether that is a jury of her peers or whether it's a grand jury, we need this to move forward. We need it to move forward now.
Going back to the fact of the Floyd family having done an open casket funeral in recognition of the Emmett Till case, and that decision to hold an open casket funeral to show the brutality of what his murderers did. That's now a big part of an exhibit in the National Museum of African American History and Culture, a very powerful exhibit. What do you think is the force of having the country confront the image of an act like that?
Well, I think you said it. We need to confront the ugly parts of our history. We need to confront the ugliness that still occurs today, the brutality, the forces that are brought upon Black and brown bodies in this country. We need to see it, we need to understand it, and we need to stop it. So I think that was Mamie Till Mobley's hope, is that by showing the body of her son, his um, beautiful face distorted in such a horrific way. I'll tell you, I don't know where she found the strength to do that. I know that our family is very spiritual, very religious, and I know that that brought her to that point. But I also know her intentions, and those were her intentions were that we would not be talking about George Floyd. We would not be talking about Philando Castile. We would not be talking about Eric Garner. And I'll tell you, we saw, with video, we saw the murder, in living color. We didn't see it with Emmett's case, but we certainly saw the aftermath. So I just think that that kind of brutality, I don't know if anyone can turn away from that. I know that it is a part of confronting, it is a part of understanding that our humanity is being attacked, dignity is being attacked. And I'm not sure who in this country takes great pride in that. And maybe it's the white supremacists, maybe it's those that hate, the value of diversity in our country. Maybe it's those that feel fearful that they're losing something. So I just know that we need to change things. We need to turn it around. I'm exhausted. I'm tired of us supporting and of hearing other mothers, their cries. Dante writes, I was just speaking with her yesterday, and family members that were able to attend her funeral. The pain and the grief, it's exhausting. And I'll tell you, it's impacting our country. We have a pandemic right now that we're trying to overcome. We have a vaccine, different kinds of vaccines that have been introduced. We have not found a vaccine for hatred and for bigotry and for police violence and for white supremacy. We've not found that. And we need to find something. We need an emergency, I think, to take place. And those bright minds, those scholars, those legal professionals and others and the media and all of us, it's going to take all of us to turn this around. It shouldn't just be on the shoulders of the families. We're fighting through trauma, fighting through grief to try to fight for justice for their loved ones. It should not take 66 years to bring justice for Emmett Till. I should not be sitting here talking about this. I have 5 grandchildren, 3 children, adults, and I should be talking about something else. We should be building better, in our country. But we have to stop. This is our responsibility and our obligation. We cannot move forward when we don't take care of what's happened in our past. And I know that there are those that want to move forward. They certainly want to, but we can't. And I say that unapologetically. We cannot. And I'll continue to remind our country what happened to Emmett. It is a today discussion. It is not a yesterday discussion. It is a today discussion. And when you experience and when others can experience the kind of brutality that may happen in their family, when brown and black bodies are, where that stops, and I hate to say this, but white bodies experience the same thing. I think and I heard someone say this the other day, that we likely will have change. And I've been talking about this value proposition of how do you turn things around? We just haven't created that element of a value proposition yet for Black and brown bodies. And I just don't understand why. So I know I've said a lot there that may not have answered your question, but
No,
it's
it
on my heart.
was a very powerful and evocative statement. The In terms of, can you describe the moments when you found out that there was a verdict in the Chauvin case before you knew what it was? What was going through your mind?
Well, I'll tell you, I was actually at a funeral for one of my relatives who was tragically killed. And I was getting text messages and I just stopped in my tracks. Trying to honor the memory of my relative that was
Oh
murdered
wow.
as well. But I stopped in my tracks and they said for 30 minutes, we might hear. So I was standing, with my phone plugged in. Everybody knows me, knows that my battery goes out on my phone. So I'm standing at a outlet, looking at my phone, and all of a sudden I just dropped to my knees. And my relatives were like, "What's going on? What happened?" That's when I heard the verdict.
Wow.
And then I told them, I said, guilty on all three charges. And someone mentioned it, and the room just, you could hear. I mean, it was muffled for me because I was in this weird zone, I'll tell you. But it was a zone of relief, but only for a moment,
Right.
to be able to exhale for a moment, but knowing how much more work that needs to be done. And particularly in Minnesota, I don't know if you know this, but there's about 470 names of individuals from 1984 through George Floyd and even beyond that have died at the hands of police in
Mm.
Minnesota. So we have an issue here, and there's more work to be done. Now we're dealing with Dante Wright,
Right.
um, and others. There's bills, there's policies. A lot of these families are working hard. Philando Castile's mother is working, with our local legislators to turn things around. There's also in the George Floyd Policing Act on a federal level. There's also on a federal level the work that we're doing as well. We have a proposal out now for the Victims of Racially Motivated Murder Act, and that is to empower the families of the victims. Because I'll tell you, Adam, there's these policies and these a lot of these bills, they don't impact the families. Trauma, um, PTSD, the kind of generational pain that they deal with, having remedies, a way forward to repair and recover in their lives. They don't have that. So we're still working on those things. Families supporting families against police violence, of course, they have about 9 different bills that were introduced, in the legislature. Um, they have also brought attention to Minnesota or to Minneapolis for the policies and practices to be examined, by the Department of Justice, and that's being done. Merrick Garland did mention that just a few days ago. So we have a problem in this country, have a problem in Minnesota, and we have a problem in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and other places, and it needs to be fixed. We need to really dig out this. I'll tell you, this cancer that is evading, our humanity and our country and our way of life and our future going forward. So it is, there's a lot of work to be done, heavy responsibility, but I'll tell you, I was ecstatic, happy. Uh, like I said, I fell to I fell to my knees
Mm.
because thanking God, for at least pushing this forward, because there are a lot of hopes and dreams, and a lot of work, a lot of, I like to lift up the names too of frontline people here in Minnesota who have been out there fighting for other families, like Nikema Levy Armstrong, um, uh, Leslie Redmond, who's leader in the NAACP, Angela Rose Myers, and so many others, Chantel, um, and I'm forgetting some of the names. Like when you start naming names, you might forget. But I'll tell you, uh, there's a lot of mothers who are out there too. Tashira Garraway leads the Family Supporting Families Against Police Violence, and I actually have the names, and I promised them that I would lift their names up. If you don't mind me just naming some of the mothers that are out there fighting for their loved ones. So Tashira Garraway is fighting for Justin Pig. That was her fiance. Matilda Smith she's the mother of Jafford Smith. Marilyn Hill is the mother of Demetrius Hill. And then Irma Burns, Jamar Clark's mother. Valerie Castile, of course, Philando Castile's mom. Del Shea Perry is the mother of Hardell Sherrill. Kimberly Handy Jones, the mother of Pardell Handy. Ashley Quiones is the widow of Brian Quiones. Then we have the brother and sister of Isaac Aiden, that's Denny and Samaya Aiden. Amity Demick is the mother of Kobe Heisler. And then Karen Vang is the mother of, is the relative of Travis Jordan. And there are other names out there, but these mothers and these relatives are all a part of Family Supporting Families Against Police Violence. And they're working really hard. So we exhale for a moment, but those folks, a lot of those folks went back to the front lines and they're fighting for Dante right now and his family.
Mm. By the way, my condolences to your family, given what you just shared. In terms of, you had mentioned Dante Wright a number of times. What was the experience of just learning about that happening in the middle of the Derek Chauvin trial? And then a day later, we find out the release of the video of young Adam Toledo. Does it get difficult to retain hope when this keeps on happening, as you know?
You know, my personal opinion, I have no other choice but to hold out hope and to keep fighting. You know, I think these frontline people have been very specific about the actions that need to be taken, and they have been very courageous in speaking truth to power and calling on our legislators, calling them out in some instances. And these are people, I mean, I have police officers in my family, I have attorneys in my family and others. But, it's important that we speak truth to power and we identify where there are some mistakes or where there are some areas of correction and where we need to just reform things. So I just know that we can't give up. There's what's the opposite of that? I know there are probably some folks in our country that would wish that, we wouldn't have boots on the ground. And I'll tell you, there's a place for everybody. There's some people that are really good and have that kind of courage to stand up, call out, others speak truth to power. Then there's those, that can take to the airwaves, whether it's television or, podcasts or radio, using those platforms and amplifying the names of these lost loved ones, reminding us that we need to say their names, but we need to do more than just say their names. We need to, well, let me just put it this way. None of these folks, unfortunately, are coming back. And that would be justice for these families. But to amplify their names and to make sure that we have the kind of laws and policies in place that we're not attacking brown bodies in such a comfortable way that police are operating right now. Now, not all police are operating that way, I'll admit that. But there are those that are causing families to lose their loved ones with no justification. So that needs to turn around. So we have to hold out hope, but we have to also find that place wherever we are, whatever station of life that we're in, that we can help in some way, whether it's social media, TikTok, any of the, Twitter and Instagram or whatever it is. And whether, there are some people that are graphic artists that can take some words of the mothers and bring those to life in sort of an image. there are legal or attorneys and folks in the legal profession that can lend their voice. I'm fortunate enough to work with some African American students a couple years ago in Georgia at Georgia State. They helped me to frame what justice looks like, for us and our family, and we did that with the Victims of Racially Motivated Murder Act. Like, what more could be done? There are students at in New York. There's law students at CUNY. We have a family attorney that we're working with, Jaribu Hill, who's a alumni from that institution. And so, we're still working, with that. But with those law students, they're looking and digging underneath, these cases, some of these cases as well. There's a lot that our public can do. If they feel that they can't, see something, speak up, say something, be a part of this. Because I just don't think we're comfortable in America with the kind of division that we have, with the resurgence of white supremacy in our environment, with the resurgence of hate being on display and right before our eyes. We need to call it out. This is not the kind of country I want my grandchildren to grow up in, right? But I want to be a part of the solution. And I know that things have changed. I have some relatives that are a little older than me, and they are just astonished at what kind of changes have taken place over time, from before Emmett, through Emmett, and then now, and who's involved in that, with the kind of diversity of those that are standing up, I think is wonderful. But there's so much more, that needs to be done.
So, as you said, you weren't in the court when the verdict happened, but did you reach out to the family after? And can you describe what those conversations were like?
Well, they were busy, but I
I
definitely
imagine.
reached out. I reached out in other ways, whether it's through social media with some remarks
Yeah.
that we put under the posts, our social team. We cried, together. I was able to connect with them just a couple days ago. So I was able to, express, and sometimes words don't come. Sometimes it's just your presence, and sometimes it's just that exhaling and, the rejoicing of um, holding that person that's responsible for everything in our world, God, praising God, for the results and for answering our prayers, so that kind of confirmation, and joining them in that respect is what has happened over a period of time since the verdict has been put out there. But there's still the sentencing. They have a journey, but it's not over.
Right.
This is just one step. So I think reminding them of that too, and that they gotta hang in there. There's still work to be done. There's still more courage and strength that they're going to need to push forward.
Thank you, Deborah, for sharing your story and coming on the show.
Thank you.